Hello and welcome to the interview on France 24. Our guest today is Gilles Yabi, the Africa Project Director for the International Crisis Group, and he's here to talk about the deteriorating situation in Mali. Thank you very much for being on the interview with us, Gilles. I think a lot of our viewers will have perhaps come to this conflict properly with the showing of those pictures of the old mosques and mausoleums, these UNESCO World Heritage artifacts being destroyed in Timbuktu. What do you think is really behind this? Is it an Islamist group, or is it criminals looking to trade in artifacts as they already do in drugs and other illicit commodities? What do you think is really behind that very publicized destruction?
Well, I think it is partly religious and partly political. I don't think that it is just for trafficking. It's partly religious in the sense that this Islamist group has a very specific interpretation of Islam, and their view of Islam is that these mausoleums and of all of this is not important and is not what is asked for by the Sharia. So it is compatible with their vision of Islam, but at the same time, I think it is more political in the sense that they destroyed these mosques and mausoleums after the UNESCO declaration that this city was under threat by the presence of Islamists. So it was kind of a signal that they wanted to really to give to UNESCO and to the international community to say that they don't care about UNESCO declaration, and that's why I think it is even more political than religious.
And of course, to get the media attention of the international media to broadcast these pictures.
Absolutely.
Nevertheless, people do talk about the importance of smuggling routes for the Islamist groups. Very hard to control across the whole Sahara region. Do you think that some kind of control of those smuggling routes is possible? Would that be a way to start containing the conflict in northern Mali?
Well, certainly managing to control better the borders and to be able to control the smuggling routes would be a key element in countering these groups. But it is extremely difficult when you look at the map and you look at the size of Mali and the size of northern Mali. It is just impossible, actually, to have a total control of the smuggling routes. And we are talking about a region where smuggling has been an activity for decades, even for centuries. So it's not something new. What is being developing in the last 5 years is kind of, now you have not just trafficking in cigarettes and human person, you also have trafficking in cocaine, and that means a lot of money going into the hands of not just the Islamist group, but also a wide area of intermediaries in this region, and that is part of a big problem in Northern
Some
Mali.
have even drawn connections between cocoa from Latin America being sent on routes through Mali to Europe. Do you know anything about that?
Yeah, well, I think the best example widely publicized was in 2009. There was a plane, Boeing 727, with a big plane, just landed in the desert ahead of a bit far away from Gao. So, and it was clear that it was full of cocaine. So that gave an indication of how serious is the problem and what are the kind of connection that we have there between trafficking networks in Latin America. I think this plane was coming from Venezuela, for example, and West African roads. But again, this is not just the problem of Mali, the issue of drug trafficking, and more generally the negative aspect of the globalization, because it's also about the transnational crime growing with the globalization more generally. It is a particular threat to these countries because of their fragility and the incapacity of the states to control control, and actually they have the capacity to destroy the state.
Let's talk about one state that does have military capacity, that's Algeria. And I'd like to look at our map once again, because you did mention Gao. And this is a place where not only did this plane land, as you were saying, from Venezuela, but also where Islamists have come in, apparently from Algeria, there we have Gao in our map, displacing the Tuareg rebels who've been for a long time fighting for their own cause in northern Mali. So this is a very problematic area in northeastern Mali. Is there anything that Algeria you think is failing on to provide some kind of security? Is that even possible?
Well, the position of Algeria is certainly critical for the improvement of the security situation, not just in northern Mali, but in the entire region, because Algeria is a big power, economically, but also militarily. And the feeling is that it's not just now, but again, in the last 5 years, we knew that ACMI, the Al-Qaeda in Islamic Maghreb, was present in this zone, and also a lot of networks of traffickers. And the feeling is that the commitment of Algerian authorities is not compatible with the capacity of Algeria in this region, the capacity to better control the borders, the capacity also to make sure that there is no terrorist group entrenching their presence in this region.
So they could
to
do
some
more.
extent, the feeling that they could do more. But I think given the situation now in northern Mali, it is important to bring Algeria really into the diplomatic efforts being pursued, and it is important to count on Algeria as well to be able to find a solution to the problem of a terrorist group operating in this region.
On the diplomacy, Gilles, who should the African community or ECOWAS talk to? I mean, you've got the Tuareg rebels who don't get on with Islamist groups. You've got Ansar Dine, but not only Ansar Dine, there's also Al-Qaeda in the Islamic Maghreb, as you mentioned. So who should the interlocutor be to stop to stop this conflict?
Well, I think there is kind of a wide agreement to say that it's not possible to discuss with terrorist group, and terrorist group are groups that have been involved clearly in terrorist attacks, and ACMI clearly is a terrorist group. They have been involved in taking a lot of hostages in this region for years, and have been involved in over attacks. But MNLA, which is the main Tuareg movement which launched the rebellion, very certainly a possibility to discuss with them, knowing very clearly that no one in the international community and the regional community is accepting the principle of breaking the state of Mali. The issue of the sovereignty of Mali is important. But again, there is a possibility to have discussion about basically renegotiating the relationship between the north and the south of Mali, not just on Tuareg terms, because we have various other communities living in northern Mali. It is important to bring all the communities together. But it's certainly impossible to talk with terrorist group.
Except they seem to be gaining some territory, and the longer that diplomacy doesn't work, the less territory will be controlled, presumably by the MNLA, the people that you think that can be interlocutors.
That's true. It is true that the recent evolution in the sense that the MNLA is now extremely weak on the grounds, and the main cities are really controlled by ACMI or Ansar Dine, which has linked with ACMI. It's complicated the search for a political solution. At the same time, there is one interlocutor which is important that we have not been mentioning. It is the state of Mali, the government of Mali. And the problem is that we have a rebellion, and at the same time we had a coup that have a major impact in destabilizing the political architecture in Mali, and also the security forces and the army. So to be able to discuss with northern groups and to be able to put forward what are the lines of the discussion, you need a government. You need a government in Bamako. You need a government that is perceived as being legitimate by the population, and you need a government that is able also to control the army and to put the army back onto its feet. And that is essential to be able to have a proper political solution backed by the threat, a credible threat of the use of force. I think we are not there yet, but again, the issue is not just what are the groups that can be involved in negotiation in the north, but what is also important is to be able to have, as soon as possible, a legitimate and strong government in Bamako.
But how are you going to have a legitimate government that doesn't control northern Mali?
Well, I think it is also important, while recognizing the seriousness of the situation and the particular suffering of the population in northern Mali, it is important to have in mind that the population of Mali is around 15 million of people, and the majority of the population is not living in the north. The majority of the population live in the south of Mali. So that's why it is important to save the north, to be able to find a solution in the north without compromising the future of the country itself, and more generally, without bringing the entire country of Mali into war, which will have serious economic consequences on the wider population of the country. So yes, the government can be perceived as being legitimate in Bamako to some extent, because it's not a government elected. We are not talking about election here. We are talking about a government of national unity. So it would be some kind of legitimacy. But that is important because that's what we can have now, given the political conditions. It can also include northern representative, very, very, very obviously.
Okay, we'll have to end it there because we've now run out of time. But thank you very much for your time, Gilles Yabi, the West Africa Director for the International Crisis Group. Thanks for watching.